to be involved, to, get membership into a professional organization related to your field, it only adds to your own personal professional growth. So when I
Mhm.
think about the ethics, we have a duty to continue to be in the know about what's going on in our field, what those trends are, what are some new training opportunities, what can we do to further our skills so that we are in a better position to serve others.
You're listening to Mentor Moments, where we talk about all things counseling, technology, education, and career development. I am Braden Wooters, and I'm joined by my co-host, Dr. Michael Keener. Grab a seat, and let's get started.
All right, welcome everyone to our latest episode of Mentor Moments. We are very excited and proud to have Dr. Nancy Foster here. She is the current president of the National Rehabilitation Association. So, again, welcome, Dr. Foster.
Oh.
Can you share a bit about your background and how you first became involved in the field of rehabilitation?
Of course. And I'm going to apologize if I put anybody to sleep. Sometimes I think that I'm just not that interesting, so I'll try to, be interactive as I speak. In thinking back, kind of about my upbringing and background, I was born in the 70s, raised in the 80s. And, in the 80s is when I kind of became aware of, my surroundings and, people, culture, kind of all of that. And I knew that based on that, and I did have an aunt who's clinical psychologist, I knew that I wanted to work in a helping profession. And how that translated, I didn't know. Post-secondary was Mississippi Valley State University. I got a bachelor's degree in sociology there, and I remember my senior year, one of the deans asked, "Hey, Nancy, what are your plans? What are you going to do? Talk to me about when you leave here." And I said, "Well, when I leave here, I'm going back to Illinois." So I said, "You know what? Let me tell you about me and what I'm thinking, and maybe." I valued her opinion. So I gave her an overview of me, what I was looking to do. And her response was, "You're going back to Illinois. SIUC has an incredible program, rehabilitation counseling. You need to be in that program because what you've just described and what I know of that program, that's a good marriage, that you two marry each other perfectly." So I did my due diligence and got some additional information. And 2.5 years later, I was enrolled in a program. And a little about the educational piece, I have a bachelor's in sociology, master's in rehabilitation counseling. I have a master's in administration of justice and security. There was a very small piece back in 2008 where I thought I wanted to work in a penal system. I don't know where that come from. So got that. And I have a PhD in international psychology. So that kind of rounded out the degrees. I started a third master's in forensic psychology, but some personal things kind of popped up, and I am the legal guardian of my great niece. So she needed more of my attention than focusing on a third master's degree. So I kind of put that one off to the side and then putting all of those extra energies towards helping her and negotiate her world or whatever. So SIU Carbondale, where I matriculated my master's degree in rehab counseling.
Well, that's a stellar rehab program nationwide. So that, excuse me.
I agree.
Yes. Well, I don't know, like Tim Janikowski, who was my director at the University of Buffalo, right, came from Carbondale.
Yes,
So, yeah.
yes, yes. I remember when he left. I was with him for 2 semesters. He taught the intro. He did one of the dyad classes and such. And so he was just a phenomenal professor. We did not like it when he went to Buffalo, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, he's retired now. So
Yeah.
I've kept in touch with him through the years.
Oh,
But
wonderful.
yeah, well, and again, he taught me foundations in my first practicum class too. So
Wow.
there we go. It's like Kevin Bacon. We have 6 degrees of
6 degrees of
Tim
separation.
Janikowski. Yeah.
Love it.
Such a small world. I'm very curious about, you touched on it already a little bit, but were there any like big pivotal moments that, pointed you towards rehabilitation counseling? I mean, that conversation that you had was really, foundational. I'm curious
Mhm.
about any experiences that you had prior to that that really kind of pointed you in that direction of like service and I'm curious about that.
Yeah. I think that's a lot of I had to kind of dig into my personality, because when I think about working, I want to do something that I honestly would love and that would provide me some fulfillment and would give me some type of income that I could, have the life that I kind of wanted. And, when I think to, high school, and when I think about the need that I saw, just a little bit more history, grew up poor. We were in the projects from my fifth grade year through my senior year of high school in East St. Louis. And just my outlet was television. I didn't have the exposure that you would want someone growing up to have, so they know about their world. My living world that I talked about being exposed to was through television, and wanting to experience what I saw, wanting to have some input and some knowledge about what I was feeling based on what I saw. So I knew in order to get to that, there was going to have to be a level of education that supported that. And I knew that I wanted to work in social services. I knew that there was so much need, not only those experiences that I saw on television, but those experiences that were happening around me. The need that people had, the disconnect that people had with clinical services and
Mhm.
getting help and understanding the vocational opportunities around them. There was just so much need and so much despair. And there were so many people that were just locked into where they were with no outlet. And I wanted to be an outlet. I wanted to say, you know what, I have this knowledge base, this level of expertise. How can I use it? I have the desire to gain this level of insight. Now I want to use it. So those were a lot of pivotal pieces in there that further gravitated me towards a helping profession.
Absolutely. I want to make sure that I like spotlight the passion in your voice explaining that. That's one thing I love about doing a podcast, is being able to hear these kinds of conversations and hear that kind of passion. So it's very exciting.
Thank you. I
This is
appreciate
more of a question, I think, personally, as opposed to maybe for the podcast. You mentioned a PhD in international psych, and I'm very curious. I don't think I've ever met somebody with that background or specific education. Could you like share with us a little bit more of like how you ended up in that program?
Of course. My kid's sister. She worked for the federal government, and we always had conversations about the various kind of pieces and the money, if you will, that's out there that would allow me to develop a program and help others. So again, that's my mindset. Helping others. How can I do it? How can I make this work? These are all of these ideas that I have. And so one of the areas relating even back to my work as a vocational counselor was the work that voc counselors do with immigrants and refugees. There
Mhm.
was a longitudinal study that RSA facilitated that looked at their program over about, gosh, I want to say about 10 years. So those from that study come out in 2005. They were published. So I read through as many of those as I could to get an idea of a need. There are always implications and recommendations. So I wanted to really highlight that and mirroring that. And so that's kind of the end as far as the dissertation. But in the beginning, international psychology looks at a Western ideology of psychology as viewed through the cultural and cross-cultural lens. So when I think about international psychology and what it means to various cultures around the globe, I wanted to use that to look at how can voc counselors assist immigrants and refugees with having better access and success with the VR program. So that was pretty much the basis of my dissertation, was looking at those implications and recommendations and kind of moving that forward with my own recommendations for some level of progress. But I wanted to use that and develop a program to present to ICE, the State Department, anything to kind of help with matching and making some type of linkage with their department and VR for success. Acculturation is difficult.
Mhm.
No matter what end, if you're going to a host country or coming, it's difficult. And I think that there's a piece missing. And I think that a program that I could have developed would have helped bridged a significant gap.
I love, and you kind of answered already, that next question though, the we were going to ask, which is, you're already mentioning the steps that you've taken to like maximize your impact in the community. What inspired you to pursue, a leadership role within the NRA?
Stepping up. It's really with my personality and my character, I don't mind. I gravitate towards opportunities to lead, to be an example. I enjoy being a problem solver, rolling up my sleeves and helping. And, I have been in leadership positions, and I am currently as, supervisor leadership position. And so this is an opportunity to take that, forward. It is, my own personal infrastructure, if you will, building opportunities for professional growth. So I truly enjoy being a leader. I like stepping up and stepping in when there is a need. And during the time that I campaigned or tossed my hat in the ring, it was to step up. NRA was having some significant difficulties with getting people to want to hop in and be on the board and be on ad hocs and do all of these things. And I said, you know what? That old adage, we can talk the talk, but let's walk the walk. So I wanted to be that person that stepped up, not that I didn't want to, but I stepped up because I wanted to, and there was a need. So I was happy that I was in a position to do that.
So, again, I'd love to hear that. And I think, again, our listeners, I even think of sharing this with students again to kind of hear that message. And it's really just becomes part of who you are. And I was teaching ethics this semester, and we were talking. A student asked me, it's like, well, why should I join a professional organization? People at work have joined, but they didn't keep up their membership. And so obviously, there's always the pro con debate or cost benefit. Young students, I know there's usually reduced rates for students, but we
Mhm.
started really talking about it from an engagement perspective, because you can be a paid member and not be engaged.
Yes.
You can not be a paid member, but be super engaged sort of within websites or going to conferences. And so I
Mhm.
tried to really frame it as an engagement. How,
Yeah. It's almost like you have an opportunity, and I'm going to use this analogy as loosely as possible. When you decide that you want to be involved in something, that you want to add a title, whether it's parents, you want to, go to work, there is an expectation that you will fully be engaged in that. And so when I think about working in the workforce, no matter the job, if there's an opportunity to be involved, to, get membership into a professional organization related to your field, it only adds to your own personal professional growth. So when
Mhm.
I think about the ethics, we have a duty to continue to be in the know about what's going on in our field, what those trends are, what are some new training opportunities, what can we do to further our skills so that we are in a better position to serve others. When I think about our clientele, when I think about people who are coming through the door, people with varying levels of disability, their social worlds upheavaled because of a lack of funds, or dealing with the symptomology of their disabilities, being in despair of the emotional toil that takes. We have to be in a position to be able to provide some guidance and some insight and some support and some clinical skills to those persons who are coming to us. So we do have an ethical and moral obligation to be at our best. And one way to do that, one of the many ways, is to be involved in a professional organization and be engaged. So not only just sign up, but participate in the training opportunities. Look at the networking and the leadership opportunities and skill building. Be engaged in the policy and the bylaws committees that talk about the rules and what's going on in implementation. We do have a moral and ethical obligation to ensure that we're where we need to be so that we can help someone else.
Love that. I just, again, to me, without even before even thinking about this, I would never not be part of the organization, because now it has become this sort of ethical, moral thing. Like,
Yes.
what? why would I stop being part of it? And then sort of the
Mhm.
fun or the selfish part, it's sort of I have a built-in alumni network, like when I get students or graduates to
Exactly.
that I get to say and connect with them as
The
well.
huge networking opportunities there, definitely.
As current president of the National Rehab Association, what would you say are your top priorities for the association during your tenure?
Well, that is such a good question. You know, in thinking about that, I actually got that conversation in my mind started as president elect. So as president elect, I started, really looking at because now I'm on the board now, right? So I got the inside scoop to a lot of things. So I wanted to, during my president elect year, which was last year, just really get my footing, see where we are as an organization, and how can I further move that forward. So I thought about some of the things I wanted to accomplish as president and how to bring those ideas to fruition, right? And it was grandiose. It was all over the place. It was huge. And then I had to kind of bring it down to make it a lot manageable because I tell you, the ideas that I had, I said, there's no way you're going to, the first 3 months, there are some things that need to happen that you're not going to, get things moving that quickly. So what I wanted to do was look at our membership. That is a huge priority for us. Looking at how do we maintain the engagement with the membership that we have, those who have decided to let their memberships lapse, how to re-engage them and answer questions about, just kind of like a focus group, if you will, why did you not continue? And then for us to look at ways to respond to that and put some things in place so that that's not an issue moving forward for other members. And also another initiative, another priority, if you will, is to re-engage academia, really looking at, how do we engage our student base? That's the lifeline of us, of NRA. We have students, we have a lot of programs that are merging. You mentioned with Maryville University. There were VR programs all over the place 10 years ago, and now they're emerging under different departments. And with the changes from core to K-CRAP, you have to make sure that we're holding true
Mhm.
and being able to provide a level of engagement for the student base. We have to show some relevance. So we're looking at that as well. That's a priority. And so some more priorities include your uh, definitely the membership, definitely looking at networking programs and opportunities, definitely looking at how do we look at a program or some protocols for leadership skill building. So we definitely have some significant priorities that we want to bring to fruition. So hopefully those main ones, membership, and then just re-engaging and just making sure that we're offering what we have outlined that are membership benefits.
And I can see that, I know this isn't a paid endorsement, but again, just from the changeover with the new website, we're getting a lot more communication. I am a member of the rehab counselors, subcommittee. We're getting lots of free
Nice.
trainings that way.
Very nice. Yes,
The website's easier to navigate. It's easier to communicate with
definitely.
the board, the NRA board. So I guess I see that, and so it does make it easier to sort of talk about it with. I always tell students, I say, what organization should I join? Join an active one, right? Like
Yes.
join one, and so that's the reason in Missouri I joined MRA. As a student back in Buffalo, I was told to join ARCA. So
Mm,
okay, but they were sort of on a national level. I never got a personal connection, or at least
right.
here in Missouri, I can say we do things. And then,
Mhm.
Mhm.
so again, if I had an endorsement, NRA is active. It's doing things. People can see the outcomes.
Definitely. And we want that to grow. We want that to grow. We aren't letting grass grow under our feet. We are definitely making sure that things stay hot and that as trends move, we want to stay engaged in those trends and make sure that we're bringing that knowledge to our membership so that they know that there is activity with our at the national level.
I think going down that same path, could you highlight some of those key events or initiatives that NRA has planned for members in that near future?
I'm very excited about some of the things we've got planned and some that are in the brainstorming logistical phases. So, right now, we have a save the date for our Employment Disability Summit. It's an annual summit, April 3rd and 24th, and it will be virtual. And the purpose of this annual disability, it's a legislative focus. We look at policy, federal policy, state policy that affects our ability to govern our discipline, right? We look at the changing trends and how those correlate to the services that we provide. So we've got a lot of great sessions planned that highlight and target blind services, that target transition, that target more specifically like the vending program. So we've got a lot of good sessions that are being proposed that we're just excited about. And I'm personally anxious to listen to many of them because we are in I won't use state of flux, but what I will say that there is change. And until we're in a position to change that, our advocacy efforts need to be on par. And that's actually the theme of this annual summit, advocacy. And so that's what we'll be hearing during that summit, some advocacy. How do we do it? Grassroots approaches to advocacy. One of the other things that I decided to do that grandiose, and I had to kind of bring it down a little bit, was CEU opportunities. We didn't offer any for a while outside of the summit, and then outside of our fall conference, there was kind of nothing. So we're going to offer 6, with 3 being free, 3 being paid with a nominal fee of maybe $25. I don't foresee us going over that. But each of those will provide some CEUs anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half. And right now we've got 3 of the 6 lined up. We need to get them scheduled. And since the Disability Summit is in late April, May will be the first. And then we're looking at October for the fall conference. And then we will kind of fill in those other 5 outside of that time frame. So outside of that, we've got our drum roll. We've got our in-person. We're wanting so desperately to do an in-person. We tried last year, but I am determined we will be in person for our fall conference this year. So we are right now vetting a few states. There are 2 left, and I will say that Illinois is in contention. So
Awesome.
yeah, so
It's
we
good
are
to have a
looking at
post-national conference.
exactly. So we're very excited about that. And we want to, of course, get that state chosen pretty quickly because, putting on a national conference, there's a lot of moving pieces. And so we want to make sure we give that state the opportunity to work with the board to put something really, really great together. So that's what we're looking at right now as far as, what we're kind of some tangible things that we're offering right now.
That's great. I guess I also have another going back to engagement. I guess I just want to thank you and NRA. I did a service learning project in an assessment class where me and the students created the professional engagement questionnaire. And NRA allowed me to sample membership to get enough, participants so we could do our statistical analysis. So we sort of got 2 publications going. Hopefully should be the pilot is with the Rehab Counselors and Educators Journal. And then,
Oh, okay. Yes.
so now we're writing the second journal, but just again, talking about you're connecting with academia and students, you know, I, I'm happy to share this survey to anybody if they want to get
I'd
their
love to. Yeah, I'd love
assess
to look at
their
that.
sense of professional engagement. It's more on the affective side. I mean, there's other career engagement surveys. So this is sort of their curiosity and excitement for their profession. But
Hmm.
I guess just thanking NRA for allowing me to sample our
Of
membership.
course. Definitely, of course.
I guess I'm interested. I guess I mean, you said you sort of have this calling if you're going to show up to do the work, but it's also another level to say, I want to be president. So did you like scaffold your way up, or is like, no, let's just go right for presidency? Maybe I think our listeners or our students would sort of like, how do you know the time is right as well,
Mhm.
right? Like this is the time.
Yeah, besides being in that moment where there was a need and I hopped in there. We have to, I always tell people when you come into work, when you're about to do anything, take a self-assessment. That gives you some key indicators of your readiness to do something, to cook. Are you wanting to cook? If you're not ready and you're tired or something's going on, you're distracted, you may cut yourself. If you're going to go outside and play with the kids and you're tired and things like that, you may be more aggressive than. So we have to take a personal self-assessment of, where we are in the moment. Is what is expected of that role something that I can provide? Am I personally ready to have the buck stop with me? And, I will say that thinking back, those leadership roles I have always just gravitated towards. It is just innate. I think back to my senior year of high school. I got very interested in politics. And so I was the youth council president to elect Gordon Bush mayor of East St. Louis back in 1990. And those leadership, then that leadership role was there. And I said, I need to do that. I've got ideas. I want, to engage and talk and meet. And I want to be a part of that process. And so sometimes, in my wanting to be part of the process, you have to be in certain roles to do that. And so just after that, campaigning for governor of Illinois, I've campaigned for Congress. I campaigned while matriculating for my master's degree. I said, hey, why not run for mayor of Carbondale? I don't know what I was thinking, but I just really enjoy that. I won't call it pressure. I enjoy being brought to task. I enjoy problem solving and being part of the solution and the movement forward for whatever it is. And I see myself best serving in the role of leader. Not that I can't follow. I'm an excellent team player, love it. I have been on teams where the leadership has fallen through and I've said, okay, let me step up so that, things can continue to progress. And so that's just an innate part of me and something that I've accepted. There are times when I'm the leader and I go, hey, I just wanted to show up and sit. What's happening here? You have those, you go to a training and they put you in a group. It never fails. I'm the one presenting the group project. And I go, how did this happen? I was just sitting here. No, Nancy, go and make sure you tell them this too. So I've just accepted that that's how things are going to fall for me, but I love it.
Have you done strength finders? Are you a maximizer? If you've done strength finders, I just see you just maximize everything.
Mm-hmm.
I need to.
I was thinking the same thing. Yeah. You've done a really great job of kind of outlining your vision for NRA and how that's kind of coincided with your prior experiences. I kind of want to ask a more personal question. I think
Sure.
the name of our podcast is Mentor Moments. I'm so curious about who has been who have been your mentors? Who have you kind of modeled your leadership off of?
Oh my goodness. If I were to say patience, that would be my mom. My mother was born and raised in Mississippi. So she has had to deal with quite a bit. And she has instilled a sense of patience, a sense of sitting and thinking, because everything isn't go, 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 do, because sometimes you need to sit and process and think. So I get that from her. I get from my sister, and not to bring the mood down, she passed away of breast cancer last year. She worked the federal government. She was in one of those positions, stressed, and she was previous military, and she was like, this needs to be accomplished. Here's the date. Here's the time. You got this. Make a decision. So I emulated that. I said, you know what? I like that. And even though she's the little sister, I got her by about 4 years. She just had an air to her personality that I enjoyed. And she was not one of those a pity party person. She was like, you know what? You cried for 2 seconds. Now let's formulate a plan. Let's get it together. Let's get it implemented. If we need to pivot and change, we're in a position to do that. And so I have a few other relatives who I look to. There was a wonderful ninth grade English teacher that I had who was so supportive of any ideas that I had that I wanted to implement. And she first, ninth grade, was the first to start me to public speaking. She would say, "Hey, there's going to be a program and I want you to deliver a speech. So sit down next to me. You write a speech with this theme. I'm going to write a speech, same theme. And then we're going to put the two together. And then you're going to speak it to me a couple of times. Then you're going to stand in front of the school." I didn't hesitate to say, yes, yes, let's do it. Um, and I think back to some of um, the supervisors I've had, one in particular. It's kind of the same thing as my teacher. She was so professionally nurturing. It was just so good to have her. Her name, Kathy Carmody. I worked for Ray Graham Association. And she would say, "You know what, Nancy, we have this as an issue, work on developing a policy and then we'll talk about it." And I would write it up and I would think about it, add in some this, tell her, "Hey, this is based on this." And she'd tweak it and it would be implemented. I would go, "Oh my God, this is great." So I've had a lot of good women, strong women in my life, professionally and personally, that have really added to how I present now, how I approach, life and work.
I've never heard the term. I'm sure I have, but the term, professionally nurturing, and that's something that's really standing out for me. And I love that we're talking about professional organizations getting engaged, and I feel like that is so hand in hand and overlapping with those themes. So I just want to make sure I highlight that. Love that.
Well,
Thank you.
yeah, and I guess as we sort of like wrap up, maybe that leads us into this question, and you sort of alluded to it, but I think it's important to sort of share again. So, what advice would you give emerging leaders or professionals considering a deeper involvement in professional associations like NRA?
I would say play to your strengths. It's taking that inventory and understanding who you are. And because in a leadership role, you want to help. You want to know the mission, know the underlying values. You want to be able to take that information and let that inform on decision making. You want that knowledge to inform on how you're developing initiatives and priorities and how you're going to move all of that and bring it to fruition. And so I would say just take a personal inventory to discover oneself. Do I have the chops to do this? Because again, the buck's going to stop with you. The decision making, the progressive movement forward. And so there are a lot of expectations, and the person wanting that leadership role needs to understand that they have to live up to those expectations. And so, after you play to your strengths and understand what your strengths are, I have weaknesses. We all do. Understanding what those weaknesses are and ensuring that the people around you, that active, engaged board, can supplement that. You not only want to play to your strengths, but in understanding your weaknesses, those key people with those skills can fill that in. And my gosh, you've got one heck of a support system, and you can rule the world. You can really make some things happen when you're looking at it from that perspective, bringing all of those pieces together. You can really accomplish some great things.
I think we just saw professional nurturing again right there. That's just
Yeah,
my opinion.
absolutely.
I appreciate that so much.
We've been so excited to have Dr. Foster on our show, and I hope our listeners found some extra motivation. But Dr. Foster, any last words you would like to share?
The only thing that I would like to add is one piece that I forgot to mention. When we look at initiatives, one of the things that I talked to our board about this week, we want to increase our collaboration. So I have asked or tasked our board with kind of thinking about other like-minded organizations that we can affiliate. So we're working. So that'll be part of our initiatives as well. But, NRA being part of a professional organization is the way to go. If you want that professional nurturing, camaraderie, networking, professional growth and development, even maintaining CEUs, you want to be engaged in a professional organization that supports the needs of your field. And for voc counselors, for organizations, for community organizations, for state private rehab, this is where you want to be. And so I ask that if there are any questions, any additional insight that I can share, please reach out, president@nationalrehab.org, or you can reach out to my work email address. That's nancy.foster@illinois.gov. I look forward to talking with you further. And if there's any insight and guidance that I can provide, I'd love to help.
Terrific.
Dr. Foster, thanks for joining us today.
Sure thing. I enjoyed this. So invite me back. I'd love to give kind of a recap at the end of the year on those initiatives and accomplishments and things like that. I love it.
Yeah, book it. Let's do it.